Hey, good morning. How you guys doing? So here's something I have never done in 30 years of doing what I do. I want to show you a picture of somebody. We call her Saint Cheryl. This is Cheryl Corte. And today is Cheryl's last Sunday. Cheryl, she's moving away. Cheryl has been a part of our guest services team, an anchor lead at our 9 a.m., making stuff happen. But more than that, she has been one of the essential links or connectors or mediators, if you will, between Terra Nova and the Orange County Rescue Mission and our Rescue Mission Village of Hope community and family. And she is such an essential part, not only of having them here and being a part of their lives as a part of our lives, but caring for them in super selfless ways. It's been amazing. It's humbling. It's encouraging. It's inspiring to see her do what she does. And I wanted to take a second and honor her on her last day. So will you give Cheryl a round of applause with me? So, yeah, we will miss her. Well, as Josh said, we're nearing the end of a series we've been in all summer. It started in June, which means, as he said, in 2 weeks, we're kicking off a brand new series called Icon. The subtitle, I love the subtitle. It's got a crazy subtitle, The Empowering Invitation of the Cross. The Empowering Invitation of the Cross, which is a weird subtitle. That is a phrase I don't think anyone in the ancient world would have ever even considered a possibility or considered what someone might say. And I'm not really sure it's something that most people, maybe even Christian people in our world, would really consider. Like the cross, the emblem of like humiliation and defeat and shame, is like the invitation of that is, I'm sorry, empowering. Like that's a weird word to attach to that. But I hope it's going to be a 4-week series in the month of August, starting in a couple weeks. I hope that by the end of this series, you will not only consider this invitation to be incredibly empowering, but you'll be saying yes to it all day long, every day. Well, that's happening in 2 weeks. Today, I want to begin with a question. And the question is this: have you ever experienced bad blood? You know what I'm talking about? Have you ever had some bad blood between you and somebody else? Like there's misunderstandings, there's conflict, there's been disappointment, disagreement, and that's started to fester a little bit, and it's evolved into some resentments and some tension. So there's that coworker that you just can't stand, and they just trigger everything bad in you. They seem to always be opposed to and contradict everything you say and do, or there's that relative that you don't even talk to anymore, but they keep showing up at the family functions. And so you have to do all those weird like holiday avoidance dances. Like, well, when are they going to get there? And when? Well, then we're not going. And it's their family coming at 9. Well, then we'll come the night before. Or like however that works. Or maybe there's a friend who's disappointed you, and now they've disappointed you again. And you are just pulling away from that friendship. Bad blood, when you think about it, it really is everywhere. I mean, conflict can infect any relationship. No marriage can go very long without a bit of it. You can't live in the same house or apartment with somebody for very long and not have a little bit of that. No friend can be your friend for a long time without causing some of it. No, even like the best workplaces have a little bit of it. Bad blood is everywhere. Conflict infects all relationships, and it can lead to resentment and distance and tension between you and others. And in a community or in a family or in a friend group, it can create siding. You know what I mean by that? Siding, where people start to take sides and people start to bring others onto their side, pulling people away from other people. It infects others. In fact, you may have even felt forced into that by someone else in a community or a family group at some point. And that apparently is precisely what has been happening in this Jesus community in Philippi, this little colony of heaven. So today we're in part 9 of our 10-part series, Citizens of Heaven. The subtitle is all about living as right side up people, like opposite people in an upside down world. We've been taking the summer to go through this famous letter to the Philippians. It was written by Paul to a Jesus community in Philippi, the Greco-Roman city of Philippi. And Philippi, it's important to know, was a Roman colony city. And that was a point of pride for them. Only a few cities in the empire at that time, maybe 10 or so, had that status, a Roman colony. And the colonies, these cities like Philippi, they were considered to be like miniature Romes, like a miniature Rome. Everything about a colony like Philippi, a colony city like Philippi, would be modeled after Rome. Its government, its city planning, everything. It was to be this little bubble of Rome in the middle of what we now call Greece. And Paul and Timothy in this letter, they play off of that. They play off of that picture or that idea to communicate something to the Jesus followers there, and I think to us, that like that's us. They are there to be like a miniature heaven in the middle of Philippi. We're to be like a bubble of heaven everywhere we go in Orange County. And now as he ends the letter that we've been in, he wants to thank them for their generosity. So the letter begins with discovering they've sent a gift, very generous gift to help him out. He's in prison and the prison doesn't pay his bills. Like they don't feed him and take care of him. And next week, we're gonna talk about this like thank you note. It's funny because he doesn't do anything normally. Like Paul doesn't do anything like normal people. His thank you note is just like jam-packed with all these brilliant, brilliant observations. I can't wait. Next week is one of my favorite sections of the entire letter. But first, before he does that, he wants to bring a number of these ideas that he's been weaving together throughout the letter. He wants to bring them all together and do so in some real practical ways. And he jumps right in because it's about to get real, okay? So here's what he says next. I plead with Euodia and I plead with Syntyche to be of the same mind in the Lord. Now, he's been talking throughout the letter about this, if you're a community of heaven, like living in sync with each other, standing firm, like side by side together, arms linked, one soul, one mind, right? And that we do nothing in a colony of heaven that's motivated by self and me, myself, and I, and pushing myself forward or propping myself up, that everything is motivated in heaven. It's all about others, serving others, what's good for others, right? And for the first time, we're getting a specific picture of something that's been tearing at that unity or that oneness in this community. Euodia and Syntyche are leaders in the community. They're leaders in the community, women who Paul goes on to say, contended by my side. They have contended by my side for the cause of the good news. They're my co-workers. They have fought in this fight with me. Their names are in the book of life. And in a city like Philippi, the first image that might come to mind would be the city's register, where the citizens of the city's names would be written down, and not everybody who lived in a city like Philippi would be a citizen, but those who were the citizens, their names would be written down. But that is an image that's often used in the Hebrew scriptures for the roll call, the registry, if you will, of the citizens of God's kingdom in the age to come, that our names are written in a book of life. But there's a problem. There's a problem. These two leaders are at odds with each other. They're at odds with each other, and it seems like they're pulling the community with them, and you can kind of imagine how that happens. There's rifts, there's siding that starts to occur, and the language of this letter has implied that. But now, in our day, like that would be the common practice. That's like that's every day that ends with Y. It's like in many churches and many communities, the fact that these two ladies they're leaders, they're influencers, they can't figure it out. Like they're at odds with each other. They're not talking to each other anymore. They don't come to the same service anymore. There's some siding. There's some side conversations, maybe she said type of stuff, some politicking. For us today, that would be like, sorry. What else you got? Like, really? I mean, that's almost acceptable. Like that's just kind of expected in communities and in churches that kind of thing would be happening. It's just like no alarm bells going off at all, and not just in churches, in families, am I right? HOAs, hello, your workplace, your community, your neighbors. It's just all the time. That always happens, but Paul is not having it. He's like, no, and he's naming names. Did you get that? Like, can you imagine a letter being written like this from Paul and Timothy to the church of Terra Nova? And we're reading it all out loud. And the person who's reading it, I just picture, because they're reading it in public, they're all, okay, Euodia and Syntyche are right there. And I picture him getting to this part of the letter and going, okay, so I'm calling him out in the letter. All right, well, here we go. Can you picture that? Like he starts to call some of us out like by name, like naming you and you and you. Hey, get it together, people. Eternity's on the line here. Eternity's on the line. The honor and reputation and your unique ethos as a colony of heaven, your colonial charter is on the line, people. Where's your head at? Where's your head at? Where's your head? Now, that's a good question. Where's my head at? What am I thinking about when I'm in that head space? At odds, pulling other people with me because it feels better when other people agree with me against you, creating division anywhere that might happen, us versus them. Where's my head at? Predictable, right? My rights, my offended feelings, my honor, my resentment, my pride, my ideas that weren't taken seriously, my certainty and confidence in everything from my point of view, my presumption about what's up with you and what you mean. Where is my head at? Where's my head at? It's almost guaranteed that there's one place my head is not, and that is what Paul says. Have the same mind. Have the same mind. And what mind would that be, Paul? Is Euodia just supposed to agree with Syntyche? Well, I guess you're right. Is Syntyche supposed to take Euodia aside now and just forget about whatever happened? And you know that when you've got real bad blood with somebody, to just agree with them, that is not an easy thing to do. What mind are we supposed to have that's the same, Paul? Oh yeah, it's been at the heart and soul of the letter the entire time. The Christ story, the mentality, the thinking that Jesus has. Here's how he put it earlier in the letter. In your relationships with each other, you have the same mentality. You have the same way of thinking that Jesus himself had, and then he tells the story. Who, being in very nature God, did not consider equality with God something to be seized at or taken for his own advantage or used over others, but he emptied himself. He emptied himself, taking the very nature of a servant, a slave, if you will, being made in human likeness and being found in appearance as just a human being. He humbled himself. He emptied himself. He humbled himself and became obedient to death, even the worst imaginable, most shameful death of them all, the cross. And therefore, God has exalted him. He didn't exalt himself. God exalted him to the highest place and gave him the name that's above every name, that the name of Jesus, every knee would bow in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue acknowledge that Jesus, the Messiah, is Lord. That Jesus, the Messiah, is Lord to the glory of God the Father. That's the mentality. That's the Messiah's self-lowering, self-emptying, self-humbling. Let God exalt me. I don't exalt myself. That's the mind. Like, that's how to think about everything and everyone. You think like Jesus. You guys have the same mind. In other words, I'm not asking you to agree with each other. I'm asking you to agree with Jesus. Don't just agree with each other. Agree with Jesus. Because at the heart of the Jesus story, and therefore at the heart of a Jesus community, is love. The self-giving, self-emptying, self-humbling, others reconciling, others elevating love and grace of Jesus. I start there. I always start there. And if I lose that, I lose everything. If we lose that, we lose everything. We lose the plot, we lose the story, and we lose our place in the story. Have the same mind, Euodia and Syntyche, he says. I beg you. I plead with Euodia and I plead with Syntyche. I beg you. Have the same mind. I started to wonder, like, what if we considered division and divisiveness as intolerable as a roach in your pasta? Like, you're out on Friday night, the waiter places, there's some roaches in there, and he's like, it happens. It's roach nature. I know it's not great, but and you're like, oh no, no, it does not happen. It is not okay. Like I will never eat here again. And what if we considered that kind of relational mess as intolerable as something like, that's Paul. He's like, oh, no. And note how he appeals to the people around them to aid in the same minding, the rift mending, like that the community is never a part of pulling apart. They're actually involved in helping people come back together. Like, this doesn't happen in heaven. This doesn't happen in heaven. We heal this stuff. And that's a message to every single one of us. Any group, any family, any marriage, any team, and it raises this question. It raises a question, like, how tolerant am I of division and siding and politicking and drama? And if some of us were honest, like, I kind of like it. I hate it, but I kind of, how tolerant am I of bad blood? Is it okay? How tolerant am I of conflict that's poorly resolved or never resolved, of roaches in my pasta? Am I okay with it? Am I comfortable even being a part of it? Am I eating it up? Do I have the same mind as Jesus when it comes to this relationship? And this really specific, could not be more specific example and application. It should make all of us sit up and pay attention a little bit. And it leads directly to the thing he says next to the colony. Rejoice in the Lord always, like as a matter of habit, as an automatic thought in every context, good and bad, losses and wins, ups and downs. You choose joy, you choose gratitude, you choose praise, rejoice. Let that be your resting face. Let that be your resting place, if you will. Now, joy and rejoicing, this theme has been a real dominant theme, a motif throughout the letter, front to back. And it's important to know that when he talks about joy, joy is not the same as happiness, and it's not just a feeling or an emotion, though it affects our emotions. Joy, best understood, joy, when he's talking about it, is an understanding. Joy is an understanding. It's a way of putting life together, putting the world together, if you will, a perspective on life, a perspective on the story of life, like the long arc of the story that we all find ourselves in and our place in it and where the story is going, that results in a settled peace, a resolve, an emotional grit, if you will, that we have always at all times. Rejoice, he says, rejoice. This is so good. Not in your circumstances. Not in your circumstances, which may not be joyful, frankly. It's better than that. He says, rejoice in the Lord. Rejoice in the Lord. Rejoice because you know the story, because you're in the story and part of it, because you're connected with Christ, because the Lord of the world, who loves you, by the way, you are seen, known, and loved by him, who has been obedient to death on a cross, and yet has been exalted to the highest place over the dark power's grip of sin and death. You just choose that. You choose that. You make that your habit, and you rejoice. In fact, he doubles down. He goes, I'm going to say it again. Rejoice, like do that. Now it turns out that's incredibly good advice. It really is. It's incredibly good advice because research has shown that happiness, that a joyful perspective on life actually helps your brain think with more flexibility and creativity and complexity. In fact, Harvard's Sean Aker, this excellent book, Happiness Advantage, and a wonderful TED Talk, by the way, a very kind of viral TED Talk that he did on this subject. He points out that research, and he goes through the research, shows that your brain at positive is 31% more productive than at negative, neutral, or stressed. How many of you would like to have your brain be 31% more productive this next week? Like, how amazing would that be? Your intelligence rises, creativity rises, energy levels rise. It turns out that joy, this perspective on life, releases endorphins, and that ignites the brain's capacity to problem solve and think creatively and make connections between like, oh, that's related to this, foresee consequences, look down the road, focus, and because of that, regardless of what's happening in your life and how bad it might be, in fact, maybe especially when you're in a moment, as the Philippian community was, of suffering and struggle in their city, maybe especially because of the challenge, like the more difficult the circumstances are, the more you need your brain to be at its best. Am I right? And so Paul says, choose joy. Choose it always. Wrap your head around an understanding of the story of good and evil and the struggle that's taking place and the true Lord who will set the world right someday. Every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that he is Lord. And you lean into your place in that story, in this moment. Choose joy. And then he says, this is so good. Let your reasonableness be evident to all. And now he's writing in Greek. It's a Greco-Roman context. He's writing in ancient Greek, and he uses a word, epiekes, which was a very important word in Greek philosophy, kind of a classic word. New Testament scholars say it's one of the rare Greek words. It's kind of hard to translate into a single word in English because it's kind of this big idea, a complex idea. It includes things like forbearance, reasonableness, magnanimity, which is, I love that word, just being a magnanimous person, fair-mindedness. It has this general sense of maybe meeting somebody halfway, being able to do that, giving people the benefit of the doubt. It's the person, I don't know if you've ever met somebody like this, who doesn't have to be right even when they're right. It's like, have you ever seen like, but you were right. Yeah, I didn't have to be right. I can be bigger than that. Magnanimity, reasonableness. Your reasonableness, he says, that should just be obvious to everybody who sees you. Like that's what everybody sees. In other words, he's saying to this colony of heaven, you be known in your city for how reasonable and magnanimous you are. You know, those Christians, ooh, they're just so darn reasonable. Have you ever noticed? It's just, they're just so reasonable, right? I mean, can you imagine? Can you imagine, like, if when people thought of Christians, if when people thought of, like, churches, even if they didn't believe what we believe, they said, well, you know, they're just so reasonable. They're just so reasonable. Is that how you think people think about us? About Christians? Is that how people think about you? And if not, why not? And of course, epiekes, this idea of reasonableness and magnanimity, it comes much more easily to a joyful mind than a frightened, anxious, panicked mind, right? Which might be why he says next, the Lord is near. The Lord is near. Let your magnanimity, your reasonableness just be what everybody sees because, hey, the Lord is near. And he's quoting here directly from Psalm 145. The Lord is near to all who call on his name, to all who call on him in truth. It's like he's right here with you guys. I know you're suffering. I know you're struggling. Even in this prison where he is, even in this suffering, even in this valley, the Lord is near. The Lord is near. So, he says, do not be anxious about anything. Now he's using a word, merimnete, which is a very broad word in the Greek language. Very broad. It refers to like any kind of overthinking, anytime your mind's just like cranked up and churning, right? What in 12-step circles is often referred to as stinking thinking, like troubled and worked up and afraid or anxious or obsessing or catastrophizing, oh no, or paranoid, like I know what they're trying to do, frazzled, worried, be anxious about nothing. Now, anxiety was just a constant everyday part of ancient world because the world that they lived in as they saw or understood the world was just filled with gods and goddesses and spirits and daimons, powers of various kinds. It was a world that was like crowded with spiritual powers and forces to be appeased or offended, even accidentally, curses and spells to be cast, incantations and amulets to ward all of those off. And the average person could just feel their life hanging by a thread like every day. Constant peril, constant jeopardy. Just don't be anxious. Just don't be anxious, ever. This is crazy. It's naive. How? How, Paul? And the answer is, by knowing and trusting and entrusting the one true God who is above all the powers. Now, throughout this next section of the letter, Paul is riffing the whole time on a couple of lines from the ancient prophet Isaiah. And Isaiah had said this, you, speaking of God, you will keep, and the Hebrew word, and the prophet Isaiah writes in Hebrew, the word is like guard or protect or watch over. You will guard or protect or watch over in perfect peace. And the Hebrew word peace is the word shalom. It means like wholeness. Everything's right. Everything's right between me and you and between me and God. And I'm right with the world and I'm right within myself. It's well-being, completeness, shalom. And the writer, the prophet Isaiah uses that word twice. You will keep or guard in shalom, 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 shalom. Now in Hebrew, using a word twice was a way of like amping it up, like doubling down on it. It was a way of creating a superlative. So it's like saying, you will keep in the shalomest of shaloms. You will keep in the peacest of peace. You will keep in perfect peace those whose, what is this? Minds are steadfast. Whose minds are steadfast because they trust you. Because they trust in you. So he says, trust in the Lord. Trust in Yahweh. Trust forever. For the Lord, Yahweh, he is the rock, eternal. Knowing and trusting and entrusting to the one true God who is over all. And back to Paul, so he says, so don't be anxious. Don't be anxious about anything, but in every situation, because the Lord is near, by prayer and petition, asking for the help you need, placing things before God, present your requests to God, talking with him, processing him with him in everything that's going on in your life, and trusting all of life to him. But not in a passive way. Not in a passive way. And this is so key because, and this is so important to know, in every situation, including and maybe especially every anxiety-producing situation, and some of us are in anxiety-producing situations right now. In every situation, there are things I can do. There are things I can do, and it is good that I can do them because God places certain things in our spheres of responsibility, and that's a good thing because God made you and God made us in the image of God with efficacy to be agents in the world or to have agency in the world, like real legit cause and effect in the world, and he will not take that from us. He will respect that because he gave it to us, and there are things I can do. There are always things I can do, and I must do them. And at the same time, there are things I cannot do in every situation. There are things that I cannot control, and it's actually good that I cannot control them. It's good that I can't do them, that it's not in my sphere. There are things I cannot do, and I must pray. And prayer, in fact, is actually a spiritual form of cause and effect. It's a spiritual form of cause and effect. There are things I can do, then I must do them. There are things I can't do, and I must pray. And in every situation, there's always both. Every situation you find yourself in, there's always both. But anxiety stifles my capacity to see the two for what they are, to see the difference between them. My perspective on what I need, that I need for what I can and for what I can't do, as the serenity prayer, famous in 12-step circles, says, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the big part of the prayer is, and the wisdom to know the difference. The wisdom to know the difference, because that's often where the challenge is. Anxiety robs us of that perspective, and I need that because there are things that I can do. And I must do them. And there are things that I cannot do. And prayer, according to Dallas Willard, I love his definition of prayer. Prayer is just talking with God about what we are doing together. Prayer is going through my day, talking with God about what we're doing together, the things I can do that I am doing, and the things that I can't do as I lean into him. And as I learn to do that, as I learn to live and to act and to pray in every situation, there's peace. But that's not exactly what he says, because right in the middle of this, he adds an insight that's huge right here. He says, in every situation, prayer and petition, with thanksgiving, with gratitude, cultivating all day long in every situation the discipline, and it is a discipline of gratitude, especially as I'm facing anxiety-producing situations. And that statement, my friends, that's genius. That is a really genius statement, because study after study has shown that one of the most powerful mood lifters and anxiety busters is simply this: think of a handful of things that you are grateful for and write them down. Think of a handful of things right now that you are grateful for and write them down or say them out loud. And he says, and you do that, you're presenting everything to God, and you're doing it like with thanksgiving. Here's what will happen. And the peace of God, the shalom of God that transcends all understanding, it just doesn't even make sense. And some of us in this room have experienced moments like that. Like all hell was breaking loose, the train has come off the tracks, and you have a peace. And it doesn't make sense as you're trusting God and people are like, oh, I'm sorry. And you're like, actually, I'm okay. I mean, thank you, but I'm okay. How are you still standing? I don't know. There's a peace that comes, a shalom from God that doesn't even make sense. And it will, here's our word, it will guard. It will watch over that peace, that shalom will guard or watch over your hearts and your minds. It will protect your heart and mind, your thoughts and emotions. And again, he's just riffing on Isaiah 26 this whole time. Like this person who God himself, the God of peace, is guarding over and watching over with perfect shalom, who has this steadfast mind. The steadfast mind because they're trusting God. And what does it look like to be that kind of person? What does it look like to be that kind of person? Well, for Paul, in part, it looks like this conversational relationship I have with God. All day long, every day, in every single situation, this conversational relationship where as I go through the day, I'm talking with God about what he and I are doing together all day long. And speaking of minds, he develops that thought a little further from Isaiah 26. Finally, brothers and sisters, whatever's true, whatever's noble, whatever's right. You know, there's some things that are just like, that's right. That's just the right. Have you ever had those, like, that's right. Thank you. That's just so right. Whatever's pure, whatever's winsome, like it just draws you in. It's like, oh, that's so good. Whatever's admirable. If there's anything that's virtuous or worthy of praise, think about that. Think about that. Feed your mind that, focus your mind on that, true and noble and right and pure and winsome, lovely, admirable, virtuous, praiseworthy. That's where your head's at all day long, every day, right? Which is not easy to do, especially in our world, because listen, if you pay any attention at all to media, any attention at all to news or social media of any kind, you know this. Their bread and butter, like their stock in trade is whatever is untrue and ignoble, right? Whatever's just messed up and just wrong with the world. If there's anything impure or ugly or despicable, if there is anything vicious or blameworthy, you need to know. You need to know that, and you need to be aware of it, and you need to be thinking about that. So we are going to tell you about it all day long, every day. And listen, it is hard, dare I say impossible, to have a clear, joyful, unanxious, shalom, unanxious, peaceful, steadfast, and therefore productive, healthy, efficacious, courageous mind if I'm feeding it all day long with the things and places in this world that human beings have made ugly. And here's why this is so important. Because your life and my life is always moving in the direction of our strongest thoughts. Your life, my life, it is always moving in the direction of your strongest thoughts. Our lives, think about it, it's true. Our lives are a reflection of, and frankly, we could say our lives are a result of the thoughts that we think. Our lives are a reflection of or a result of the thoughts that we think. The families that we have, the marriages that we have, the serious relationships that we have, the jobs that we do and how well we do, the moods that we feel, the conflicts that we experience, the outcomes that we keep getting, it all begins in our minds. Everything that comes out of your life begins with thoughts, begins with your minds, the thoughts that we think. And if you've ever heard it said that it's hard to soar with eagles when you're surrounded by turkeys, right? Listen, it is hard to have a beautiful, steadfast, courageous, joyful mind when I fill it with everything that's ugly and messed up in this world. And that's why many people, and maybe some people in this room, have begun to curb their media diet, right? They've started to turn off or eliminate or completely or limit or completely eliminate certain forms of news intake. Like I used to watch a lot, I just don't really do that anymore. Social media, et cetera. And if you haven't begun to do that, if that's not been you yet, it's worth really seriously considering and evaluating what that is doing to your head and your heart. What it's doing to your head and your heart. Here's a question for you worth considering. What habits and what exposures to what sources, what habits and what exposures in my life are most likely to lead, and I bet you can come up with this list fairly quickly, are most likely to leave me feeling, and you know what, it's like, I'm frustrated, I'm angry, feeling insufficient, Not good enough, less than, envious, anxious, ungrateful, ashamed? What habits or exposures in your life are most likely to leave you feeling that way? And what would it look like for me to curb my exposure to those sources? What would it look like for me to curb my exposure to those sources? And honestly, some of them might be harder to control. It's like, it's my boss. I mean, it's just all day long. He leaves me feeling all of those things, right? It's my I'm not gonna quit my job because my coworker triggers me all day long. And you probably shouldn't. Actually, what you should learn how to do is how to bolster yourself against that while you stay in that job. It's my spouse. It's my teenager. I'm not gonna kick him out. Well, maybe, but it's harder, right? It's harder to control. But if we were honest, some of these things are entirely within our control, and we're doing it to ourselves. And Paul knows that everything in your life really begins in your minds, begins with our mindsets, their conflicts that they're experiencing, their ability to rejoice, their reasonableness or unreasonableness, lack thereof, their anxiety or their peace. It all begins in their minds and ours before it comes out in our lives. And he's meditating on Isaiah. He's meditating on the prophet, and he just guides his friends in Philippi through this perfect setup, this filter for a steadfast mind. You focus your mind. Here's what you feed your mind on. Here's what you meditate on and contemplate. Whatever's true and noble and right and pure and just winsome. It's like, oh, that's just so good. It elevates me. Whatever's virtuous and praiseworthy, that you think about such things. And then he parallels that idea with one final thought. And when you think about this last thing he says, this is a really gutsy thing to say. Here's what he says next. And whatever you have learned, let's go to that next one. Whatever you have learned or received or heard from or seen in me, you practice these things. Here's what you think about these things, and then you practice these things. Whatever you have seen. Now, for about a handful of weeks, 10 years earlier, he'd been with them, kind of just lived with them in everyday life. And since then, he would pass through. He would pass through their community from time to time and spend time with them. And you can just imagine there's long conversations in the night, catching up and so forth. There's teaching, and of course there's that. But there's also just life. There's just life that's happening, right? They'd seen how he handled really difficult people and people who triggered him. They'd seen how he handled suffering. Oh my goodness, they do not miss next week, how he handled suffering. But they also saw how he chilled. How does Paul chill? What's that look like? How he talked with people just in the normal course of things, the kinds of, how he treated people, what it felt like to be around him, how he acted and how he reacted, because your reactions speak much louder than words. And they had seen how he prayed and how he worshiped and how he gave of what he had, how generous he was and how he cared and how he just integrated the life and love and the grace and the peace or shalom of God into just everyday life, how he did it. And he says, whatever you've learned or received or heard or seen, just do it like that. Just do it like that. Do it just like that. You follow Jesus like you've seen me follow Jesus. You do life. You just do like that. You practice that. Now, think about what a gutsy thing that is to say. Am I right? Because you've heard the old saying, do as I do, not as I say, or do as I say, not as I do, right? Do as I say, not as I do, which people of course, especially for parents, that doesn't work. It just doesn't work. It just creates such frustration and mixed messages and so forth. That never really works. And Paul says, no. Do as I do. None of this as I say, not as I do nonsense. What you've learned and received, heard, seen, do that. Actually do that, which raises a question as I was reflecting on this whole section of the letter. Could I say that? Could you say that? Would you be able to tell people just straight up, you just follow Jesus like I follow him? In fact, one of the things I think about from time to time, and I actually ask myself this question almost at least once a week, maybe a lot more. If everybody did fill in the blank like I do it, would that be better? Would the world be a better place? If everybody served and volunteered just about as much as I serve and volunteer, would the net value of serving and volunteering in the world go up? If everyone was as generous, if everyone gave their money, Would generosity go up? If every husband treated his wife the way I treat my wife, would marriages be better in this world? If everyone raised their kids, if everyone did their job, had the work ethic that I have, would workplaces be better? And I ask myself that question from time to time. Like, could I say, yeah, this is the way to do it. This is the way to do it. And can you say that? And if not, like, what would have to change in the way you fill in the blank, give, love, treat people, pray, worship, work, serve, follow Jesus? What would have to change for that to be true? For you to be able to say, yeah, just do this. Watch me. And then he adds this, bringing it all together. And if you do that, you think these things and you practice these things, he adds this last line, and the God of peace, the God of shalom will be with you. The shalom of God will guard and watch over you, and the God of shalom will be with you. And we will pick it up right there next week in the series finale of Citizens of Heaven. But before we end, I want to ask, like, what do we do with this? Like, what do you do with this? What do we do with this? How can we bring this into our week? And I want to do so by resurfacing some of the questions I raised as we talk through this part of the letter. As Paul has woven all of these huge, beautiful, and somewhat kind of related ideas, challenging ideas together, let's resurface a few of those questions. Let's start at the top. Are you experiencing any bad blood? Do you have any right now? Do you have any in a relationship? What would it look like for you to have the same mind as Jesus? Not that you agree with them, but you just decide, I'm going to agree with Jesus. What would it look like for you to have the same mind? Now, by the way, that does not mean you're a doormat. Jesus was never a doormat. Having the mind that Jesus had is way more interesting and complicated and frankly more positive and fruitful than you. Being a doormat is way easier. But what would it look like for me to have the same mind as Jesus? Here's the next question. How tolerant am I? Or how tolerant of you of division and siding and politicking and drama? How tolerant are you of bad blood and conflict poorly resolved? Are you often okay with it? Worse than okay. Kind of comfortable actually being part of it. Like, this is really hard to see in the mirror. It really is, because none of us go like, yeah, I'm all about it. But then if there's like, I kind of like it sometimes. Like I actually did, and I feel maybe even righteous in it. What if we consider division and divisiveness as intolerable as a roach in your pasta? Like, do I feel that way about that? Here's another question. Is your reasonableness what others see in you? Is reasonableness what people see in me? If not, why not? Do people see me as reasonable? Like, well, I would be reasonable, but they're so wrong. Like, it would be wrong to be reasonable. Okay. Is reasonableness what others see in me? If not, why not? Here's another question. If our lives are moving in the direction of our strongest thoughts, what are your strongest thoughts like? What are your strongest thoughts like? Where's your head at? And what are you feeding your thoughts? What habits and sources in your life are most likely to leave you feeling all of that? Frustrated, anxious, ungrateful, envious, paranoid, insufficient, less than, not enough. And what would it look like for you to curb your exposure to these sources this week? Will you do it? Will you actually do that? And one last question, am I able to tell others to do as I do? Am I able to do that? Like, ask you, am I able to do that? And if not, why not? And what areas specifically or areas of my life might I need to elevate so that someday I can say that? Will I do that? Will I do that? Which of those questions, and there's a bunch of them, like speaks most to you. Maybe there's one that's like, oh yeah, that's me in this particular situation right now, kind of sparks an inner reaction or some thoughts in you. Maybe there's one of them, maybe there's two of them, maybe there's all of them, like you're the overachiever, like I got it all, I'm working on it all. How are you going to bring that into your life in this real way? And I want to make one suggestion. This week, maybe as you start your week, maybe first thing tomorrow morning, you break this back out again, these notes, these thoughts, and you reread that section, and you think about those ideas and questions again, and you just have a conversation with God about that as you enter your week. And while you're thinking about that, let me pray for all of us. Heavenly Father, I'm always praying, always thinking that you would give us the ears to hear what we needed to hear, just what we needed to hear, not what we didn't. That you would have your way of speaking to us above and beyond anything else that was said. I pray that for all of us. Give us the ears to hear what we needed to hear. The willingness, the grace we need to receive, like to pull it in, not block it out, to pull it in, to take it in. Would you give us the wisdom we need to know what to do with it, and the courage, and maybe the reminder we need to actually take those steps this week. And we pray that in Jesus' name. Amen.
Try to see it my way. Do I have to keep on talking till I can go on? While you see it your way, run the risk of knowing that our love may soon be gone.